It's all about a potential managerial merry-go-round today, who's attracting suitors and who's sitting on a sugly peg, and a new challenge awaits Gary Naismith at Ayr United. Hello, I'm Martin Dowden and this is the Scottish Football Podcast, all the news, views and analysis you need on Thursday, 7th of May. Today's talking point, are we heading for a summer of dugout departures with some managers no doubt in demand?
No, that's the ambition. We want to win every game. I see a group of players that are talented enough to compete for the win in every game, no matter who we play, where we play. I've said that throughout the season.
Will Motherwell and Hearts have to fend off unwanted suitors? And on the other hand, will some bosses come under pressure?
As for Rangers' title challenge, it's been buried here in Gorgie. They are getting the next tram out of here.
Will there be changes afoot at other clubs? And with a quarter of Premiership clubs having an interim boss right now, what will happen to them in the summer? A lot of change perhaps to come as we look forward to August.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
I'm joined today by Stephen McGowan, the Herald football writer at large, and Robbie Neilson, the former Hearts and Dundee United manager. Welcome to you both. Let's get straight into it, chaps. Do you expect significant change in who's leading who once the dust settles on this season? Stephen first.
Absolutely, yeah. I think you always expect that anyway, don't you? I mean, last season at this time, we remember Tony Docherty kept Dundee up and then he lost his job anyway, so you could never really predict. Celtic were going to need a new manager. It wouldn't be the biggest surprise in the world if Motherwell needed a new manager, albeit for slightly more positive reasons. And now we're facing the possibility that Rangers might be making a decision as well, because I think there's a stick or twist scenario for Rangers if this season pans out the way it's beginning to look at the moment. Because it looks like the league is probably beyond them, even if it's not mathematically. They can still get second if they get a good result against Celtic or the weekend. That's not impossible. But ultimately, a Rangers manager is judged by how many trophies he wins. And that's where it looks like Danny Rose is going to fall short. So, yeah, I think there will be a season of change. And, of course, St Mirren, where Craig McLeish is interim at the moment. And, if things continue as they are, you would imagine they would be looking to find maybe a more experienced manager who can give them a bit more ballast. So, yeah, a lot up in the air right now to look forward to in the summer.
Robbie, do you agree with Stephen there? A lot of change to come?
Yeah, I think, Martin, it's just the nature of football nowadays, as we saw last season, with Tony Dock doing so well and then losing his job. I think that obviously there's a few teams with interim guys in at the moment which will make changes, but there's a few interesting ones as well, that guys that have done okay that might come under a little bit of pressure as teams look to kind of progress for next season.
You mentioned Danny Rule at Rangers there, Stephen. A lot of pressure on him, obviously. You said rightly, seems out of the title race, seems as though he won't have a trophy at the end of all of this. Is it fair, though, given where they are and where they got to under him, because they were absolutely nowhere before he came in?
This is a great debate, isn't it? I mean, in a rational football environment, it probably wouldn't come under anything like this amount of pressure, but this is not a rational environment. It's Glasgow. He did do exceptionally well to get him back in the race, but there are big questions over Danny Rule now, and these are dangerous times for him. I think if you look at it, there are questions over not only his results against the other teams in the top six, which leave a bit to be desired, and the percentage win rate. I think there's been questions from supporters over his starting 11. I think over his ability to change things when tactics start to go against him. You look at the game against Hearts, where Derek McInnes made a tweak at half-time, pulled another player into midfield, but we're spit on. And Hearts were a different team, and I think there was a feeling among supporters that Danny Rose was a wee bit slow to react to that. So regardless of whether he deserves it or not, I think whenever a manager loses the faith and the support of supporters at clubs like Celtic and Rangers, it's really hard to turn off the negative dripping tap. And I think that's where Danny Rose is now.
Robbie, is there a bit of a legacy issue here? Maybe Rangers fans just can't tolerate the same script being played out over and over again, given what they've endured for so many years. With that, obviously, Steven Gerrard season, and when they won the league, they won anomaly there. Is it just a case of patience running thin, so the stakes are higher and they won't accept what's happened here?
Historically, Rangers and Celtic have both expected to win the league or be first or second. So for Rangers to be sitting third at this point and 7 points off the lead, it brings a lot of negativity. I think Danny Rowe will be there at the start of next season. I think they'll give him the opportunity to build. I think that over the years, Rangers have spoken about trying to build a little bit of consistency, to try and keep a manager in place, and they keep changing regularly. I think having come in at the kind of after Russell Martin mid-season, you get a real turnaround in the team with the players that were still there. I think they'll give him a chance. And I think he deserves a chance as well, to be honest. I think, you can see some of the things he's done very well. A lot more solid defensively, but a lot more organised. I agree with Stephen. One of the issues that he's having at the moment in the last few months is these tactical changes within games. I think that obviously Derek McInnes makes a tweak at the weekend and it totally turns the game. So that's an area that he's obviously going to have to improve in. But he's still a relatively young coach as well. And although Rangers is a huge job, I think they've got to give him time and a bit of support, and also better recruitment over the course of the summer. So I would be very surprised if he's not there come the start of the season. How long he gets will be dictated by the results at the start of the season.
I mean, the great irony that you mentioned Steven Gerrard there, Martin, and the one Rangers manager who has been given time in recent years has been Steven Gerrard. I mean, Gerrard was given 3 seasons to win a league title, probably on the back of his reputation. I don't think anyone else has had anything like that amount of time. And if Robbie's right, and if they do stick with him to the next season, which is perfectly plausible and probably fair, actually, you then get into that scenario where they're looking at the potential for more rinse and repeat, because it seems like you always know autumns here in Scotland when the leaves fall for the trees and Rangers sack another manager. So it would be that question mark as to whether you go now or whether you wait until later and take that gamble in another season going the same way as this one.
I think a lot of it also is who's available out there at this point in time, to make the decision.
Steven Gerrard's available.
Yes, but does he want to come back? That's the thing. It's so, I think if they had a sporting director, his job would be to be out there looking in the background to see who's available. But it's big decisions like that in my opinion, are they going to get better than Danny Rowe at this moment in time? Probably not.
Weeks ago, I think most people had them as favourites. I haven't done the research in terms of the stats, but since Danny Rowe took over in October, I would guess his record is probably better than anyone's. My vast team of researchers are not here today to back that up, but I mean, his record is good outside the last couple of games. When you look at Rangers, Stephen, do you see significant problems, or as you both are suggesting, if he gets the pre-season, gets recruitment right, they could be in a very strong place come next season? I
think as a kind of reference earlier, I think the problem is the record against the other teams around him in the top 6. I think I saw figures that he played something like 14 games against the other 5 teams who are up there with Rangers just down 1, 6 or 7. So, if you're looking at the games against Celtic at Ibrox, that didn't do him any favours going out in the Scottish Cup, of course, and then losing at home to Motherwell and so on. I mean, it's very rare for Rangers to lose 2 games in a row as they have now. I think the last time they did it, I think it was like something like 2018. I think there was an interim manager in charge at the time. So, I mean, it's very unusual. And if to lose 3 in a row, it would make his position really, really difficult. So, but as I said earlier, we can talk about fairness all we like. Ultimately, I think Andrew Cavan has already shown that he can be ruthless. He was ruthless with Kevin Felwell and Patrick Stewart. When the fan pressure grew too intense, he acted. So will he do the same again? Time will tell.
Given everything we've just said, Robbie, I think you were clear that you think he'll be there. Stephen, I'm not sure if you said that or not. Do you think he will be at Ibrox?
I'm going to stick as well. I mean, I think they probably should give him a bit more time, but will they? I mean, if you look at it, they have spent the guts of probably 40 million in that squad. And if they don't win the league, which looks incredibly likely, then that will be another 40 million will go down the pan, potentially, because if they won the league, then they were looking at automatic entry to the group stages of the Champions League because of their coefficient. So, the Danny Rowe kind of project, if you like, is proven expensive over the piece, and it's a question I suppose the Rangers board have to ask themselves: can they afford to give him more time? And that's what it will come down to.
Fascinating. We'll move on. Hearts fans will absolutely hate this, particularly at this time when they're chasing the title, but it's inevitable Derek McInnes will attract some sort of interest. Will the lived experience of this season, the growth in general of the club, no matter what happens in the next week or so, be enough to make him want to stay at Tynecastle, Robbie, if there is any interest, which I think surely there will be?
Again, I'd be surprised if he's not there next season. I think obviously the season they've had this year has been amazing. European football next year as well, potential Champions League. Reinvestment again by Tony Bloom, who's saying the team will be stronger next year. So unless it's a crazy offer, which I don't think will come, we're talking about Premiership clubs in England, maybe big teams abroad. I think that's probably on the level that Derek's going to jump from. So I think there will be interest. I think the Scotland one's a very interesting one, depending on what happens with Steve. It looks more and more likely that he's going to be leaving after the World Cup campaign. For me, Derek would be the number one choice by an absolute country mile. The decision is whether Derek wants that job or not. And I just, if he was still at Kilmarnock at this point, I would say that's a guy. But now he's at Hearts now, potential Championship winning team, European football. I just don't think the time is right for Derek.
Who's that?
Wife's phone.
Derek McInnes phoning.
It probably is, by the way.
Get him off that topic.
Derek hears everything. I didn't know he had a live bug in Stephen's house. So. Stephen, I'm thinking about Derek McInnes' journey through management. He's often felt a bit underappreciated for me. That's not the case at Hearts, obviously. That's significant, isn't it, in terms of, as Robbie says, say a big offer come in and he has to think about something. He's got a lot to lose by leaving Tynecastle right now, it would seem.
Absolutely, yeah. Like Robbie, I think Scotland is the intriguing one. That's a job that he wants at some point. I don't think he's been particularly secretive about that. I think it's something he would like to do at some stage in his career, but again, it's timing, isn't it? I mean, Hearts have got so much going for them. The thing with Hearts is that, and this is something that's sometimes overlooked, I think, particularly by Celtic and Rangers fans, is that they're at the beginning of this curve. And this is year one of Tony Bloom in Jamestown. So it doesn't have to be, and it probably won't be some one-off what happens this season, regardless of whether they win the league or not. They're already looking at making new signings. I suppose the question for Derek would then be, what is his personal level of satisfaction with the kind of Jamestown project and so on? I mean, there's no sign of any dissatisfaction at all at the moment. So, I think like Robbie, I think there would be questions over the timing there, and I think he probably a part in his mind wondering whether he'd have to jump ship at the minute.
Robbie, the Jamestown element is quite interesting. I think a lot of people, when Derek went to Hearts, really questioned how he would work with that, given he seems to be a guy that really likes to bring in his own players. He often actually went for more homegrown players as well within his squads, so he's had to adapt to what Hearts have done. But given the way he's maybe seen that pay off in the way it has, would that be another big thing for him to say, look, this is a tool that I'm really using well, exploiting, and it's bringing me success as well as a club?
Yeah, I think that one of the key things for Derek is that he's adapted, as you have to do in football nowadays. Not long gone are the days where it was the local businessman and the manager that ran the football club. Now you've got analytic departments, you've got recruitment departments, and I think when you look at Jamestown and Tony Bloom, what they've done over here in Belgium, actually, with Union Saint-Gilloise, took them up from the second division. They won the league last year. They're now sitting second, still challenging for the league and the playoffs. It shows you that, the progress is there. And I think as a manager as well, or a head coach, one of the most stressful things is recruitment and dealing with the recruitment side of it, as in, having to watch games, dealing with agents, dealing with contracts. You get thousands of players put in weekly every summer. So having a company there that you can trust, and I think the key thing here is that the players that have been brought in have been very good, the majority of them. So Derek now trusts that. If we'd started the season and the players had brought in hadn't been very good, it's a different story. Then you don't have that trust and you start, questioning it. But I think it's been proven with the clubs that they've got, Brighton, Union Saint-Gilloise and Hearts now, that this model works. So I think that Derek has adapted to it and is accepting of it.
And he does get the final say, doesn't he? Because I remember talking to him about this when he did a piece on the Jamestown signings, and he was talking about being on holiday in America last summer, and he'd be getting Zoom calls with the players, and Claudio Braga was like an excited puppy about the idea of joining Hearts, and had done his research into the Edinburgh landscape and so on, and there were one or two other players he was less sure about. So I think before they pull the trigger on any signing, Derek kind of carefully vets who they are and what their characters appear to be, and makes the final decision. So you'd like to think they've got the balance right there.
Yeah, I think that's the key thing. You've got to get a rapport with the player. So, what these analytic companies do is, they feed all the data in it and they basically siphon it down, to probably 5 or 6 targets. They then siphon that down again with it when they watch the player video-wise, and then they'll give the manager 2 or 3 options within that fit within the model. So it's always important that the head coach gets that final say, because you have to get a feeling for the player and they have to fit into your group as well. So I think the model they've got is obviously it's proven to be doing so well.
We're talking about recruitment there. One club, of course, that's going to probably be heavily looking at that is Celtic. Stephen, where do you think Celtic are right now in terms of the management appointment for next season? Do you think Martin O'Neill is in any way in the running for that? And how far down the line do you think they are, if they are looking to go down a different route?
That would involve communication, wouldn't it, with supporters, and actually keeping in touch, let people know what they're up to, and that's not something that Celtic really do. I think Martin O'Neill has been involved certainly in talking to agents about players for next season, which raises the question whether he is going to be there in some capacity or not, even if it's not as first team manager. So they've got probably an unprecedented rebuild coming up in the summer. They need a permanent appointment as manager. They need that head of recruitment role filled that Paul Tisdale occupied previously. I was doing a calculation. I wouldn't surprise me if they need something like 18 players going out the door, if that is the case, and then they might try and bring in a dozen or so to replace them, because they probably are a bit top heavy at the moment. So I think there's going to be an awful lot of change at Celtic in the summer. I think they're already resigned to the fact there's going to be a bit of a restructuring in the football department going on through necessity. The exact composition of that, Martin, you may as well just ask me to name 6 lottery numbers on Saturday, because the fact is that they're keeping their cards pretty close to their chest. If I told you I knew what's going to be happening, I wouldn't be honest.
Well, I might pick you up on that at the end. If you could just jot down 6 numbers and we can all cash in on that would be lovely.
I'll probably be closer to that than I will be with the next Celtic manager, to be honest. The name Robbie Keane keeps going around. There are obvious links there. It's a name which I think Dermot Desmond is admiring of. You've got the other candidates we mentioned, Roberto Martinez, and of course Jens Bertolascu. But where they go for another manager from the Scottish Premiership remains to be seen, because they haven't done that since Tommy Burns in 1994. So it's all to play for at the moment, as I say.
On Jens Bertolascu, Robbie, do you see him as a serious contender for Celtic? He's done a magnificent job with Motherwell, but I think as Stephen's touching on there, it might be a case of, did he think it might be underwhelming for the fans? Although a lot of fans, or Celtic fans that I've seen talking about this, would welcome him, it seems.
Yeah, I think he's done a fantastic job, and if you're asking me, I think he'd be one of the main candidates, having proven what he can do with a Motherwell team, getting a really good style of play. I agree with you, is it underwhelming for some of the fan base, but ultimately, it's like, where are Celtic at the moment in trying to get a manager? There was talk of Kieran McKenna at Ipswich, just been promoted. He's not coming, leaving the Premiership in England for that. Robbie Keane, maybe, so I think that Jens Bertolascu, I think, in my opinion, would be a very good appointment. And I think he knows the league now. The biggest problem Celtic have got is, what direction are they going in? At the moment, they don't have a head coach for next season. They don't have a head of recruitment. They don't have players lined up. So how are they going to play? So how can you recruit players if you don't know what the manager wants to do? You've not got a manager, so you don't know the style of play. So is this going to wait until the end of the season, and going into June, and then you've missed a lot of the good players already because they've signed pre-contracts? So it just seems to be spiralling, and we'll come to October next year and, have not recruited well because they missed this window. So, yeah, I think that they need to get something sorted very, very quickly to get plans moving forward. And I think, Jens Bertholascu would be, in my opinion, a really good appointment.
That's interesting, actually. There's just Robbie's point there, that timing is important, isn't it? Because, I mean, if you're looking at a Robbie Keane or a Craig Bellamy or even a Martinez who beat the World Cup or so, and then, they're not necessarily going to be available on the 1st of June, are they? And they need to get cracking pretty quickly. And the other thing with Askew as well is Celtic managers in recent years have become a bit disgruntled with the club's transfer policy eventually. Is there a better chance that Jens Bertholascu, given what he's doing at Motherwell and what he's achieved at Motherwell, will come in and work with what he has and make the players better? I think that's something worth considering for Celtic as well.
Yeah, I agree. What is the transfer policy? That's the problem at Celtic at the moment. Nobody knows really. As you said, there's no communication there. We don't know. They're missing out on so many players at the moment. There's so many good players that are coming out of contract in the summer that will be signing pre-contracts or have signed pre-contracts. I will wait until the 1st of June to do it, and they're missing out.
As you know, Robbie, if you're not fast, you're last. I mean, the market moves really fast. And I mean, there will be players that they will have been tracking for some time, have been trying to push a button on. They can't until the manager comes in. And other clubs will not be hanging around. They'll be in a better position to move. So every day is invaluable with us.
You look at Hearts at the moment already making signings, so they're already ahead of the game for next season. And it's just proven with the results we've had this year that, that having that, organisation and structure within it and a process is so valuable in football nowadays, especially if you're, Rangers and Celtic aren't spending 15, 20 million pounds on a player. They're spending 4, 5, 6, and when Hearts are spending 1 and 2. So the difference between the level of player isn't that great anymore. So it has to be spot on.
We're talking about Jens Bertholascu there, so Motherwell may well be looking at what they do in terms of their manager. David Gray's position at Hibs seems safe, but he probably needs a good start to next season as well. Look, we were going to skirt over the entire bottom 6 teams as well, but time is getting the better of us a little bit. Maybe save that for another podcast. Plenty of potential change down there as well. In terms of news yesterday on Gary Naismith moving from Stenhousemuir to Ayr United once the playoff matches are concluded, do you think, Robbie, that's a good reward for a good job done?
I think it's brilliant for Gary. I think that he's a really good manager. I know him from my time at East Fife about 15 years ago. He came in as a coach when I was there, and I think his progression, he's done East Fife, he's done Queen of the South, he's done Edinburgh City, and he's had a fantastic time at Stenhousemuir. So I think this is another progression for him, and I think Gary will do well there, and I think at some point you might see him in the Premier League. So yeah, delighted to see that progression, because it's very difficult to get out of the lower leagues in Scotland. There's almost a snobbery as you get higher up the leagues. So I think this is a great platform for him.
I think the one thing that surprised people with that one, Martin, was the timing. Because Stenhousemuir are involved in the playoffs, and Ayr United came out and announced that he would be joining them after the playoff process is completed. And I think a lot of people were saying, well, hang on, because you not just have kept that announcement until Stenhousemuir's fate was known. So it'd be interesting to know the reasons for that. But I mean, he was named by the League Managers Association as one of the shortlists for the PFA Scotland Manager of the Year, which is quite an honour in itself, especially when Inverness won the league. Scott Kellicker was the leading manager in League One there. So I think his achievements speak for himself. It's long overdue. He should have had this move. So yeah, good luck to him. But as I say, I was a bit surprised by the timing of that announcement.
I think, just on that, Stephen, I think the timing is basically what we're speaking about with the Celtics process is that they are, Ayr United need to get these guys who are out of contract. And if you're getting approached by Ayr United as a player and they're saying about who's going to be the manager next year to sign this contract, and they're not telling you, you're probably not going to sign. So they have to get it out there to get these players in. So I think I don't think it's great timing for Stenhousemuir, but I can see why Ayr United done it, and then Stenhousemuir have to jump on the back of that announcement.
Well, speaking of timing, that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Stephen and Robbie, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so make sure you don't miss out. Subscribe on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone. Thanks very much for listening. Enjoy the rest of your day.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.